This is Jim Williams with the Hurricane City Tropical Update for August 23rd, 7:30 p.m. We're keeping a very close eye on Hurricane Irene in the southeastern Bahama Islands. Our current feature at hurricanecity.com is the Turks and Caicos Islands, and you can get all the localized information from the affected areas. Over the past few days, we've had live streaming media from the affected areas on hurricanecity.tv, and we'll continue to do so until this is no longer a threat. But you can get all the localized information at Hurricane City for the local area of the Turks and Caicos Islands. Of course, we'll shift that as the system moves deeper into the Bahamas. It looks like the northwest Bahamas are going to take the worst of this, as it could be a Category 3 at that point, right near Great Abaco Island and Grand Bahama Island. Now, the Grand Bahama Island is number 2 on my top 5 this year, and Great Exuma, a little bit further to the south, is also in my top 20 areas to be impacted this year. And as you notice, looking at the official forecast from the National Hurricane Center, this takes Irene right over the Outer Banks of North Carolina, and then right just skimming the coast of New Jersey, heading up into New York. So this could be a huge story in the late in the weekend here, as this is heading up into the Northeast. Now, again, this is going out 5 days, and there's huge forecast track errors going out 5 days, up to 200 to 250 miles off. So this could conceivably be all the way over here out to sea, or it could be coming inland way up in here. So the 5-day cone, keep that in mind if you're in New York. That does not mean it's going to come plowing into New York City or Long Island. It could be way out here, or it could be way inland. It's a little bit too early to tell, but we're going to talk about the possibilities here coming up. All right, here's the official cone of error from the National Hurricane Center. This is one of the thumbnails below the tracking chart at Hurricane City, and you can see here 2 p.m. Saturday, this is approaching the Outer Banks of North Carolina. Now, as storm chasers go, they would love to have this kind of a scenario because you have daylight conditions. You can get good filming in for a hurricane making landfall. Of course, we'll be keeping track of that on hurricanecity.tv. Mark Smith from hurricanetrack.com, I'm sure he'll be out there with his instruments and cams, so we'll keep a close eye on this. And of course, Bill Phillips is up here in Virginia Beach. He may have to deal with this system as well. And then we have Fred up in Long Island, and we have some other people in New Jersey that keep track of what's going on. So we have a lot of observers and people that can give us information as this passes into the Northeast. But again, look out here. It could be all the way over here, or it could be all the way in West Virginia. It's just really hard to tell at this point in time, but that's the official forecast. Now let's take a look at how the models performed over the past several days. This was going back to August 20th, and the black line is the ECMWF model, which is really the best model of all the global models out there. And that had it going through the western Bahamas and right up along the eastern seaboard of the state of Florida and going into Georgia. And then you go out to the 21st, and the model shifted even further to the right. Notice the ECMWF is off the coast into South Carolina. All the models here are starting to shift. The GFDL and the UK Met insisted on keeping this in the Gulf of Mexico, but notice what happened in yesterday's runs. The ECMWF even further to the east, right up into North Carolina in the northeast, and the other models starting to trend here and hooking off to the east toward the Outer Banks, and of course the UK Met, GFDL, and the H-Wharf models all have it still tangling with Florida over here. But look at today's models. They continue to shift to the east. Now there's no threat to Florida whatsoever, and in fact the HWRF model, I believe it takes it similar in this kind of a fashion here. So all the models are beginning to shift further to the east, and look how tightly packed these models are too. But notice at the end of the forecast period, there's a spread in the models. They could be out here, or they could be up like this. So it's going to be a close call for the northeast, and the models may shift a little bit more to the east, and I'll get to the reasons for that in a minute. Actually, let's go ahead and pull up the water vapor image of the Atlantic Basin, including the 2/3 eastern United States, and show you what's happening here on the water vapor loop. The reason why Irene is going to turn is because of this, well, not just this lingering trough up in here, but there's a reinforcement coming right here. Notice it coming down. It's going to race down here to the southeast and reinforce this, amplify this trough out here. That's going to break down this high pressure ridge out here and cause Hurricane Irene to turn to the north. Now the question is the timing. The whole problem is the models early on were indicating that this was going to be cruising along at 15 to 20 miles an hour and then slow down and make the turn to the north. But now it's really slowed down. Over the past 24 hours, it's been moving less, 12, 13 miles an hour or less for the last 24 hours or so. So it's not, it should be somewhere over in this area right now, but it's not. So if the turn takes place a little bit sooner than what we're anticipating, it could be further offshore of North Carolina, and then that puts New England in play here. And, again, there's a lot of pulses coming along in this jet stream out here. So the question is, how much is this high pressure going to break down out here? Again, here's our floater loop of Hurricane Irene, and the system is in the southeast Bahamas. Looks like it's gaining a little bit of convection here this afternoon, but it's down to Category 1, so it's not where they thought it would be at this point. They thought maybe it would be a strong Category 2 or even a Category 3 heading into the central Bahamas. That's still possible. We're going to keep an eye on this, but there's a little bit of shear going on. I'm going to get to some images in just a minute on that. Now here is the Euro model. This is going out to Saturday the 27th, and notice how it has Irene just offshore the Outer Banks of North Carolina as a pretty powerful hurricane here, Category 3, heading right into the Outer Banks of North Carolina, and that would set the stage for the northeast. Here we go with the 28th of the Euro model, and that takes it right inland, right along the coast. And then we go out to the 29th, and there it is up north of Long Island. So it looks like it's going to ride right up the coast according to the European model. So we're going to keep an eye on this European model. It's a very good model. It's a very good track record. But the only thing is, we have some models, the mainstream models. The best model, really, of all the mainstream global models has been the no-gaps model, believe it or not. Let me show you the no gaps model on the tropical Atlantic map here. And the no gaps model has this system off the coast of North Carolina and skimming New England up here, kind of like a bob track maybe, just skimming New England, the Cape Cod area, and then heading up towards Nova Scotia. That's the no gaps. They've only been off by 120 hours by an average of 33.7 miles. So the no gaps has done really well with this system. Another model that's done really well with this is the Aviation Ensemble number 4 model. And if we pull that up, that takes it well offshore of North Carolina and then kind of bends it back to the north here towards New England. There's quite a few models that are showing that potential for this to move north-northeast and then bend back to the north a little bit at the end of the period. In fact, that's what that European model shows like this. It kind of has it almost going due north here along the coast. So we need to really examine that carefully. What we're thinking is happening is these little troughs really don't make much of a dent in the high pressure ridge out here and cause just enough of a weakness to cause it to turn north, but then the high maybe builds back in a little bit and causes more of an acceleration. That happened back in 1938. So we're going to have to watch this closely and see what happens here. Quite a few days to get ready, but people in the Northeast need to be aware of this potential situation. But early indications are this is not going to be of the intensity of the 1938 hurricane, even if it did make that kind of a move. In fact, speaking of intensity, the best intensity model has been the ship's model, and the ship's model in about 96 hours, which is where it would be when it gets up around Long Island or up in those areas there, would be roughly around 75 to 80 miles an hour, right in this range here is the ship's model. It's been off by about 6.5 miles going out 120 hours. So that ship's model is showing a Category 1 hurricane intensity up in the northeast. So even though it'd be a hurricane, it wouldn't be a major situation, but again, that depends on how intense the system gets when it's up that way, or before it gets up that way. Now here's the shear model, upper level maps from the University of Wisconsin, and I talked about this last night on the Hurricane Watch show, and we have this high pressure that's kind of separated from Hurricane Irene, and it's kind of blowing north winds in the upper levels off to the northeast and kind of fanning the system out a little bit too much, which is kind of disrupting the development of Hurricane Irene. what you like to see with the developing system is high pressure directly over the top, ventilating the system, and the winds fan out. Higher up you go in the atmosphere, the winds fan out and spread out, and the system gains strength as the lower levels pull the moisture, the wind in, and it evacuates out the top like a perfect machine. But with the high pressure ridge down here to the south, it's kind of blowing the tops off a little bit, so there's a little bit of wind shear, and that's not going to improve very much over the next couple of days. So this might not get up to Category 4 in this area here, which makes huge difference on how strong it's going to be when it gets up in the northeast. If it had gotten up to Category 4 or 5, then we could potentially see a Cat 3 or 2 moving up into this area, but it does not look at this point like it's going to reach that intensity at this point. Here are the pressures from yesterday out in the Atlantic. I showed this last night on the Hurricane Watch show as well. 1019, 1017, 1015, all the way across. But notice today's map. We have 1016, 1015, and then pressures are dropping over here. 1013, 1014. So the pressures are slightly dropping in this area right here, which was an indication of what would cause Irene to make the turn. So it's beginning to happen. The pressures are beginning to fall. They're beginning to weaken just a little bit out here, and then we're going to watch these pressures over the next few nights and see how much they drop and how much of a northerly turn takes place here with Hurricane Irene. All right, well, that's it for now. Join us on the Hurricane Watch show tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, and we'll be back with you for a couple hours from 9 till about 11, covering Hurricane Irene. We'll take your phone calls and emails, talk about the future of Irene, and be aware in the Northeast. Everybody pay attention. That's it for now. Thank you again for visiting Hurricane City.